I was perfectly happy with the prospect of a nap at the top of this mountain, but a beautiful bird flying at 40,000 feet on the air currents was good by me too. And he was cute as heck. The Canada jay is a year-round resident of North America's boreal and subalpine forests, and it survives harsh climates by storing food with its sticky saliva in the bark of trees. It nests in late winter, enduring extreme colds, and does not breed again in the warmer months like other birds. After fledging, the dominant chick usually expels its siblings from the nest, which then trolls around for adoption by other pairs without young. Juveniles remain in the territory they were born until breeding opportunities arise, but they are excluded from helping with new nests if they're still there for the next breeding season. The Canada jay is a long-tailed, small-billed, crestless jay, slightly smaller than a blue jay, which is the one you all know, I'm sure, with loose, fluffy, dull-colored plumage, although dull-colored does not mean non-striking. Adults have a white face and throat, a black crown patch, which varies by region, and gray upper parts, with some geographic variation in contrast and markings. Juveniles are uniformly sooty black, and generally, these guys are a sort of unmistakable bird. There's not a lot to confuse them with. Although in the West, sometimes Clark's nuthatcher. Nuthatcher? Nutcracker. These guys show moderate geographical variance, although the sexes look alike no matter what plumage they're in, and they follow a complex basic molt strategy. Again, I'll talk about that if anybody wants me to. So they start with a natal down, which is sparse at hatching and increases quickly to cover the body by day 3. Their juvenile plumage is a slate gray with bluish or brown cast, a blackish face, and paler underparts. And they actually retain this plumage for longer than other passerines. And then their definite basic plumage, their adult plumage, is what I've already mentioned. And they're fluffy. I can't express to you guys how fluffy they are. That's not usually how you think of birds, but they're fluffy. Their bill is white at fledging, and it slowly turns black as they become adults, although that's not a reliable way to guess their age. As I said, the males and females look the same, although the males are slightly larger. That's the way it always is. I've said that so many times. As I said, though, they show considerable geographic variation in their plumage across North America, particularly in their dorsal and crown coloration, which varies gradually from dark in the northeast to paler once you get to the Rockies or the West Coast, although there is little size variation across the different subspecies, of which there are 9 recognized. But there is a lot of debate about that, with past numbers ranging from 7 to 11. Here are the 9 currently accepted subspecies, which I'm not going to sit here and try to say because we'll be here all day. I will also try to find pictures of them, but as always, who knows? And 2 of these subspecies were at one point considered their own species entirely, and there is a debate as to whether they should be given their own species status back. And these guys belong to the genus Parasaurus, which is basal within... Basal. And these guys belong to the genus Parasaurus, which is basal within Corvidae. And all Parasaurus jays share the behavior of storing their food with their sticky saliva. Generally, these guys don't migrate at all. Individuals typically stay within their territories year-round. And in a study of about 3,500 birds, 94% were recovered near the area where they were banded, even up to 9 years later. Some birds, especially during their first year, will move southward or to lower elevations during the winter, which means they don't migrate in the dark because they don't migrate at all. So they can't migrate away from me where I can't see them. These guys eat a lot of stuff from arthropods to carrion, small mammals, amphibians, berries, fungi, and seeds. Corvids generally are well known for being very smart and just kind of taking whatever comes their way, although they only very occasionally catch live prey. They forage from perches, usually flying only small distances to get food. They are very opportunistic and very adaptable to whatever situation they're in, and they will quickly learn to seek out food from novel food sources, such as a human leaving their peanut butter sandwich unattended. Don't do it. And they use a sort of twisting motion to tear their food apart, unlike the hammering motion of blue jays, which you might be more used to. Caching their food is the real key to them being able to survive in the harsh temperatures they live at. They will store food year-round, but it really kicks up in the late summer and the fall. They coat food that they found with their sticky saliva, and then they store it in the bark of trees, in lichens, conifer foliage, tree forks, where they think stuff won't get to it. And as a notably smart bird, there's some rather complex decision-making that goes into where and when they store food, and they choose their caching sites based on a balanced risk factor, density, and distance from a food source. And they're also known to recache stuff to avoid theft. They retrieve food from their caches throughout the winter and even uses them to feed nestlings. And it seems a very strong spatial memory is used in finding their caches again. And dominant juveniles may monopolize cache knowledge for survival. And cache recovery has been observed both short-term and long-term. And they use Fat stores along with this caching behavior to survive the winter and to meet their energy demands. And they also use a nocturnal hypothermia to conserve energy on cold nights. That thick and very fluffy plumage that I talked about is used to insulate them and even covers their feet. And their feather setup is such that it allows solar heat penetration. It's all about staying warm. They've been noted to drink water when it's available, which isn't as common in birds as you'd think, and also eat snow. These guys are relatively quiet compared to other corvids. Thank goodness. Although I said that too soon. It might not be as often, but that doesn't mean they don't have a wide variety. They've got a wide variety. They've got a bunch of sounds. Here are the sounds. None of them are for anything interesting. I mean, they're interesting, but it's what all birds have. For alarm, for greeting, all that stuff. The one very interesting vocal thing that they do is they can actually mimic some of their predators. So they can mimic the merlin, rough-legged hawk, broad-winged hawk, red-tailed hawk, and the northern pygmy owl. And they also sometimes imitate pine grosbeaks and blue jays and the American crow. Usually they'll do this during stressful situations when there's predators by the nest, and the goal seems to be to confuse their predators and humans. When they're on the ground, they primarily hop to get around, although they can run for cover if they need to, when threatened. And when they're flying, they're usually doing these slow glides, although they're very maneuverable when they need to be, when they're threatened, or during territorial disputes. They do a fair amount of self-maintenance. Not all birds do. They'll preen frequently when it's cold. Adults have been known to dust bathe, and juveniles will bathe in water. They've also been seen stretching, and they often sunbathe, even in freezing temperatures. So just because you see one flung out on a rock somewhere doesn't mean it's a goner. Probably just cold. They're not super territorial unless food is present. Aren't we all? At which point aggression can escalate into aerial chases, bill snapping, and physical grappling. They've got a couple of threat displays. I love threat displays. They'll do a slow peck, where they open their bill and move slowly toward another bird, often used to claim food. That sounds like a dog, but it's not. And they will do on-food posturing, where they will lower their head and charge at other birds. Also for appeasement, they have a quivering display, which seems to be the go-to for birds, is to quiver when somebody else is dominant. They're a mostly monogamous bird. We see a very close association in the pair bond year-round. We've seen mutual grooming and bill touching after stressful situations, and courtship feeding is common for about 2 weeks before egg laying. And they've got long-term mate fidelity. Divorces are rare, less than 1% of pairs. And in sampled nests, there has been no extra pair paternity found. They're sweet birds. With food being their main concern, with heat coming close after that, they're pretty touchy about their food, but they will often cache their food in view of other Canada jays or Clark's nutcracker. Nutcrackers. Although it's been noted that they'll avoid caching if there are Steller's jays around, and they will recache if they've been threatened by blue jays. They've been known to dominate single jays in nature, but not at bird feeders, oddly enough. And they are frequently mobbed by smaller songbirds. It's what songbirds can do. They mob you. The predators for these guys are mainly a bunch of raptors, plus some owls. And while songbirds will mob them, they mob their predators. Food chain. They've also got a couple of displays they do when predators are near. One where they erect their head feathers with hopping and swooping, and it can include striking with their feet or pulling hair, although that's rare. And one that involves raising their tail feathers and hopping around. And it has been determined that juveniles learn predator cues by observing adults. This was confirmed through owl model experiments. I love that they made a fake owl to try to see how these birds learn to fight. I love birds. I also love how humans figure birds out. These guys breed very early, and they start their nest building as early as February, even in bad seeming conditions with food scarcity and snow. Eggs can be laid as early as late February, with thus fledging occurring before most migratory birds even get back up into the area. This is not due to food abundance. One of their big risks is food scarcity, but there's a couple of reasons that this adaptation probably happened. It does give juveniles a long summer to learn the survival skills they need, which reduces the risk of them starving in the winter, which would make me nervous too if I had to hide all my food. It also enhances the chances of dominant juveniles securing territories during June dispersal, and it allows adults to focus on building up their food supply before the winter after the young have already fledged, which increases survival rates in general and lifetime reproductive success. Pair bonds seem to form at any time of the year, including the winter, and nest building seems to start about 3 or 4 weeks before the first egg is laid, and it is finished before the laying starts. These guys have 1 brood per season, and the clutch size is usually about 3 eggs, laid 1 per day, and incubation starts immediately after the first egg is laid, and they hatch about 18 days after laying starts. The nest site for these guys is typically chosen by the males, often located on trunks or branches of conifers, usually on south-facing edges near open areas for better warmth. Nests are bulky twig platforms lined with fur and feathers, and they're built fresh each year, and they're typically about 5 to 6 meters above the ground. Their hatchlings are altricial and fledge at about 22 days. These guys develop pretty quickly. Their eyes open at about 8 days, and they begin exploring the nest at about day 17. And by the time they fledge, they fly pretty well. Only females brood, with the brooding decreasing after day 4 and stopping by about day 11. And the female performs nest jabbing as the young grow to deepen the cup. And sometimes pairs will have non-breeding offspring that help feed their current young, but only after fledging, not during nesting. These guys have a high fidelity to their breeding sites, and pairs often use the same territory and nest areas year after year. And their territory boundaries are pretty stable and fiercely defended. Non-dominant juveniles are often forced to disperse by the dominant juvenile and will often seek adoption by other pairs, often non-breeding pairs. They have a pretty high juvenile mortality rate, with the dominant juvenile in a clutch having greater odds of survival than those that are forced to disperse by the dominant juvenile. About a 52% mortality rate for the dominant juvenile and an 85% for the non-dominant ones. The adult mortality rate is about 20%, and the longest living breeding adult known was 16 years old. So I don't have too much to show y'all from this hike because I wasn't expecting Canada jays. I had heard the name, but I didn't really have a good sense of what they were, and I wasn't expecting them at the top of this mountain. I wasn't expecting much of anything. This mountain. It's Mount Jackson. I went up Mount Jackson in New Hampshire. I was in New Hampshire with my family for vacation. Luckily for me, my family are big hikers, so we were going up Mount Jackson. Of course, I brought my camera, just because that wasn't the point of the trip. Didn't mean I wasn't gonna do that. And actually, halfway up, while we were still in a very wooded area, I heard a golden-crowned kinglet, which I've been wanting to get a picture of. So I sort of ran into the bushes without setting up my video camera, because who's got time for that when there's a golden-crowned kinglet around? And there was actually a couple of them, and so I did get some shots. No killer cover of Nature magazine shots, but some pretty good ones. I then found my family, who had moved on and thought I had abandoned them to live in the wilderness, at this beautiful little rocky waterfall that was along the side of the mountain. They watched me be a weirdo looking for some other birds, and I'm pretty sure I explained to them that the sound we were hearing was a red-breasted nuthatch, because they asked. And they're stuck with me.
That's the red-breasted nuthatches. They're all over the place.
You got a camera behind you recording?
Yeah.
And eventually, we obviously got to the top. We weren't going to get 80% of the way there without getting to the top. And it was gorgeous, because of course it was gorgeous. There were a couple of other people there, including one woman whose name I don't recall. I'm sorry, but you were lovely, who did a lot of hiking up mountains and had seen Canada jays before. She saw them flying around. She told us all about them, which is just the greatest thing for me. That's my favorite thing. If anybody in the wild comes up and wants to talk to me about birds, I want to hear it. Please tell me about all the birds, all the ones you know. And so I pulled out my cameras. Yes, plural. And they were gorgeous. I mean, they're just a beautiful bird. They are adorable. There's some birds that are fancy, but not adorable. These guys are adorable. So I got some pictures of them sitting with the blue sky background. I got some pictures of them flying, because they did their beautiful flying along the air currents that are up there. It was just the best thing I could have asked for after destroying my leg muscles getting up that mountain. And I'm lucky that my family cares enough about me and about the natural world to have enjoyed the birds too. They really enjoyed them. Remember, I'm no expert on any of this. I'm not an ornithologist. I didn't even know these birds would be at the end of my hike. I just love this and want to share it with you. They're just fluffy. Fluffy.